week I had a super busy week trying to get things a bit more organized with the pasture. I'm not seeing very much growth, but I was super excited to see a few of the little radishes poking up through the soil. Around the irrigation ditches, I'm finding a lot of grass popping up, but pretty much everywhere else is all weeds. This week, I focused more on making our irrigation water move more effectively across the land. Thankfully, there is one big chunk of grass that the horses should be able to graze once I get some fencing up. I haven't measured it, but I think it is only about 1.5 acres or 2 acres. The whole pasture situation really started to get me down this week, but I just have to keep chugging along and it will eventually look a lot better than it does now. I got water flowing in a few areas where there hasn't been any in a long time. I'm hopeful that I'll see a little bit of grass sprout up, but I am not going to hold my breath. I'm getting a pretty good system down for rearranging all of the irrigation dams throughout the day to get the water across every bit of land I can. I got myself a pair of fancy irrigation boots, so now these chores just take me an extra couple of minutes after feeding every day. Watching the water come rushing down one of the ditches never gets old. The ground has been absorbing a lot of the water, but with no plants around to use it, it does seem to be a little bit futile. I've been sprinkling around seeds everywhere the water touches, so hopefully at least something will start to sprout soon. The main mixture I've been using is a grass that takes only a few days to germinate. The tillage radish that I'm using only takes 3 to 4 days as well, and then I do have some orchard grass and fescue mixed in. My hope is that eventually I'll start to see some grass pop up and I can just spread out from the area that's being irrigated. It's really nice to have little Brucey around to play with after I'm done fretting over the pasture situation.
That's a nice boy. No chomping, no. That's a good boy. It's a nice boy.
I still haven't put a halter on him. I want to make sure he is 100% okay with me touching all of the parts of his head that will get touched by the halter. I've switched Prim over to a feed that is a little bit less rich, hoping to slow this guy's growth down a little bit. His tendons are a tiny bit contracted in the front and I don't want them to get any worse. It would be ideal for him to still get just basic gentle movement throughout the day, but sometimes it's hard to contain him. At this point, gallops in the pasture are still out of the question, but that doesn't mean we can't still do things to get him a little bit more trained up. This week, I've still been doing tiny sessions every day. I try to time them around times when Prim is distracted with her hard feed. This gives her some quality time alone and me some quality time with little Brucey. Although it is still quite a few months off in the distance, this should help Bruce when it's finally time to be weaned. A lot of really young horses do not like to spend very much time away from their mothers, but Bruce has been really interested in learning new things lately. Sometimes he still has little outbursts, but I've been working hard to correct him in a way that's not gonna dim his sparkle. He responds really well to pressure when I push him away. I don't want him to be too rambunctious around me, and over time he is just going to learn better that if he wants these scratches, he's going to have to control his urge to prance about. Bruce has been doing a pretty good job showing me exactly where he's the most itchy. You might notice that he has a few little black spots on him, and that is just his baby coat starting to shed out. Bruce still tries to play with me like I'm another baby horse, but it's better off if they can figure out that there are different rules for interacting with humans than there are horses. Since he likes scratches so much, he figures it out pretty quickly that there will be no horseplay when I'm around. For being just over a month old, I think this guy is moving along at a pretty decent pace, learning everything that I want him to know before he actually has a halter on. I do a lot of liberty type work with all of my young unhandled horses. In its simplest form, this type of liberty training just relies on Bruce's brain power to do the right thing. Without him having to work too hard, he is figuring out how to behave around humans. He is starting to understand that if he stands still and is well behaved, then he gets endless scratches. Because I want to be training Bruce and not have Bruce training me, in between his little scratches, I'm going to do a few things that he needs to know. This week we've been working a little bit more on picking up feet. Ideally when I ask and not with ears above the ground. I have noticed since Prim's diet change, Bruce is getting a little bit more even keeled. I switched her from a all alfalfa diet and a pretty high amount of growth feed over to a grass alfalfa mix. It's about 15% alfalfa, and then for her hard feed she is just getting a ration balancer, some flaxseed oil, and some extra vitamin E. I haven't noticed her dropping any weight, but if she does start to slim down too fast and needs more nutrients to support Bruce, then I'll change her feeding program up again. But at this point, I'm trying to focus on slowing down Bruce's growth a little bit so we can get those legs straight as little arrows. I had a few comments on the last video about Bruce and his tiny bit of contraction in the tendons. There are lots of horses that can go right out onto pasture shortly after being born. Wild horses have no choice but to get up and move around. It can be really hard to understand why I'm restricting Bruce's movement a little bit if you haven't seen the damage that not addressing these tiny little problems can cause. For those of you who may be having trouble seeing what I'm talking about, if you look at Bruce from the side, his little knees sometimes poke out a bit more forward than they should. And that is just his tendons being too tight for him to straighten out his legs completely. They are not bad enough to use any kind of corrective shoeing or castings, but it certainly warrants a diet change for Prim and some confinement for this little dude. He still has plenty of room to romp around, but he just does not have an area that's large enough for him to gallop. There are a few really problematic things that can happen if you don't manage a foal like this correctly. They could certainly run too hard and play too much and do damage to those tendons that are already not caught up with the rest of his body. If that happens, it can actually change the way the hoof is forming by pulling on other bones and tendons. This is one of the ways horses can get club feet pretty easily. In the wild, horses like this that have to go out and run on contracted tendons can develop club feet, and with nobody around to trim them, they are in for some pretty serious problems down the line. Unfortunately, I do see a lot of this when I go to auctions. Even domestic horses that haven't had these tiny little issues addressed properly can have big problems when they are coming 2 and 3 years old, or when you finally start to ride them.
You're gonna be looking
I
pretty
waited a
scraggly
really
soon.
long time to breed Prim. I picked out the perfect stallion, and I was lucky enough to get Bruce, who I personally think is perfect.
Those tiny balls.
Even if people think I'm
Let's
being
see.
overly cautious
Not to
or
see your
dramatic, I am going to do what I feel is right for this little horse. There's
Slide
no
on
reason to
over.
sign him up for a life
on
worth
over.
of problems just because
Very
I
smart,
cannot
Brucey.
stand to see him in a
Very
small pen
smart.
for a little bit longer. I'm hoping after maybe a week or two on the new diet, I'll be able to see those tendons loosening up a tiny little bit,
just wanna
and I'll
play.
be able to make their pen a bit bigger so he'll have more room to run. But until I see any notable changes, we are going to continue with the
You're
plan.
really getting into it, Brucey.
I would really love to get him
boy.
a little buddy, but between our sessions together
That's a
and his
good
time
boy.
spent with Huckleberry and his new
Come on
best
in for
friend
breakfast.
Ivar, this guy does get plenty of interaction and exercise on his own. Typically, after one of our sessions, Bruce goes and has a snack, and then he likes to let loose for a little bit. Since I don't breed a lot of horses, have other brood mares in foal, or other young horses to mix in with Bruce, it can be a little bit hard to watch him play on his own. I've had a few people suggest me getting another mare and foal from an auction. I would love to do that, but there are a lot of variables that would have to work out to make the match perfect. The foal would have to get along with Bruce, and the mare would have to get along with Prim, which is something that I'm not super confident in. At this point, I would prefer just to get another baby for Bruce to hang out with. It would make the weaning process so much easier on him and Prim. The problem with that little plan is that most reputable breeders will not wean their foals and send them onto new homes until they're around 6 months or older. I've had my eyes peeled for a long time for a possible match for Bruce to hang out with, but I just haven't found one that is suitable for my current situation. Because of the hay situation and the current shift in the market in low-end auctions, I have been looking closer at what is going on locally. I have a feeling that the screwworm situation is going to make it really difficult for the undesirable horses at auction to find a home. And you guys know that those are definitely a weakness of mine. I'm always doing my market research, but for now it looks like Bruce has enough to keep him occupied. Bruce is still exploring the world around him, and I don't feel like he's getting bored throughout the day. Prim also doesn't seem too concerned about staying in a smaller pen while Bruce's legs straighten themselves out. I feel like right now we are on a pretty good trajectory for the future. Since I've been trying harder to get a solid time for Bruce's training session, after I clean their stall out in the morning, I do give them another meal, and if Bruce wants to hang out again, then I do a little bit more training. Typically, he likes to roll around in the fresh hay. It's getting a bit warmer during the day here, so these two have been hanging out inside their shelter more and more. We've also been having some pretty intense windstorms, so I've been trying to keep the bedding in their giant stall to a minimum. They still have about a 12 by 12 area that is filled with bedding and straw. I do end up spying on them in the evening, and they do both lay down together to take a nap. I think Bruce is getting more tired from his shenanigans during the day because I do notice that he does sleep a little bit more than he has in the last couple weeks. At this stage, he is still gaining between 1 and 3 pounds every day. Height-wise, foals his age can grow between a half an inch and 3/4 of an inch every week.
Buddy, we gotta clean this stick up.
I've definitely seen his little booty pop up in this last week, so he is for sure growing. At this point, he is about the same exact size as Nigel.
You got your cat with you? It's alright, little buddy. Just want to check for Tiny. It's okay. Oh, Nigel! Nigel? Well, I found Tiny.
Because of the heat, the bugs have gotten a little bit worse, so I've been catching Nigel more regularly, which he absolutely hates. He was due for a hoof trim this week, and when I went to catch him, he tried to hoist himself out his little viewing window. Even though I have tried my very best to be friends with Nigel, he still just does not want me to hang around him very much. In the last couple of weeks, he has really started to enjoy watching Bruce run around, and he seems to be a bit more calm, at least when I'm not around. Although he does like to keep a pretty decent sized stud pile of poop to let everybody know that he is still king of the ranch. I do like to get it cleaned up as quickly as possible. For those of you that are not familiar, horses poop about once every hour, which is quite a few turds over the course of 24 hours. I honestly don't pay too close attention to when I film and when I clean out the stalls. I had a few comments recently about how the pens always look dirty, and it's probably just because it's right before I clean them. The horses that are in dry lots do have a big common manure pile that they use. For now, I am still letting it compost in place because I'm going to use it on the pastures. There are different smaller irrigation channels that run right past Nigel, Prim, and Bruce's pen, so they do get their pens cleaned every single day. It's kind of wild that where there is no water, there are hardly any bugs. So the boys in the dry lot, I've only seen a few flies every now and again. I will be moving them over to a new dry lot that they are going to be staying in for a while I take down and put up some new fencing. That will be a perfect time to clear out all the old turds and spread them on the pasture, hopefully improving the amount of growth that I'm seeing. I know Nigel would love it if I just left him alone and only cleaned his pen a few times a week, but for right now he's going to have to just deal with me being in his space every single day for a short amount of time. He's got really serious hair, which definitely help him as far as the bugs are concerned. With the extra viewing window for ventilation, his little shed stays pretty cool during the day even when it's really hot out. We are still very much in limbo with our new well, which has put a hold on all of my other plans as far as horse pens are concerned. I need to know where the well is going to be so I can start digging water lines for permanent watering solutions for all of the dry lots. We are still on the list, but the jobs in front of us are just taking longer than they expected, so there's really nothing we can do but wait at this point. We're really lucky that part of our irrigation water can be used to water the horses, and I've been using it for the garden. Our existing well is thankfully not completely dry anymore, so we have been able to do some essential things. As long as we are very careful about our water usage, we can flush the toilets, take very quick showers, and do a load of laundry or the dishes every couple of days. So if you see sprinklers going in the background or me filling up the horses' water with a hose, that is all just from our irrigation. It's honestly not ideal. I would prefer the horses be getting water from the well. Prim, Bruce, and Nigel are all getting well water. But the other horses are getting just water from our irrigation for now until the new well is dug. Most foals start eating solid feed around this time, but Bruce has been eating hay for quite a while. It's part of the reason he was getting stopped up the first week or two of life. I think he was just really excited to use his little teeth. Now they work pretty well, but when they were coming in, he did have trouble processing this hay.
What are you doing with that cat?
It's kind of funny to watch Bruce, Huckleberry, and Ivar throughout the day because they do just kind of all hang out together. Huckleberry and Ivar make sure none of the prairie dogs are coming in the yard. I did see Huckleberry bring Bruce one of his Jolly Balls the other day. Ivar isn't too worried about Prim, but Huckleberry still knows that he has to have his head on a swivel around her. For some reason, she's not concerned about the cats coming in, but she does not like it when Huckleberry's in the pen. With the heat of the day, it's been nice to partake in a few summer traditions that I have for the horses. Many of them don't get too excited about watermelon, but Ziggy absolutely loves it. All of the horses have shade throughout the day from trees or their shelters, so they're able to keep pretty cool, but it's always nice to have a refreshing treat in the heat of the day. I've noticed that they've been drinking so much more water than they usually do, which is good because with the wind, the dust is just blowing around, making their troughs filthy. Even if I only show mostly Bruce and I during this really fun time, I do spend quite a bit of time with all of the other horses as well.
Wanna try this, Sparkler? The watermelon.
Sparkler typically likes to try new things, but she wasn't too interested in the watermelon today. I'm sorry to say that her diet isn't really working very well. She has been begrudgingly eating the mixed grass hay that I bought, but I really haven't seen a difference in her waistline.
Too carefully, Stewie.
Studman and Big Gus seemed very interested in Stewie eating his watermelon, but they weren't brave enough to try it on their own. I've definitely noticed that it is way more dry here than it was in Montana. I am starting to see it show up in the horses' feet. They are getting pretty chipped up and cracked when they typically do not. When I make their new dry lots, I'm going to have a special little thing around their water trough so they have no choice but to get their feet a little bit wet every time they take a drink. Hopefully that will help with their overall hoof health. As I spend more time going through the seasons here, I am always changing my plans. I'm trying really hard to get everything lined up so when the well is finally done, I'll be able to move through all of the next things pretty quickly. It'll be really nice to get the horses out of their temporary pens and put them in a more permanent spot.
Good girl, honey. Come on. I know.
Thank you guys so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.